And I'm going to keep on speaking until I see that we are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the stream. Leeds United have played against West Ham, and you know what? I am absolutely happy with that performance from yesterday, but we're going to need to have a little bit of a talk about it. Before we do, I'd hugely appreciate it if you could pop a like on the stream. That'd be absolutely wonderful of you to do. Subscribe if you haven't yet. All that kind of stuff, and we'll get into absolutely everything. The big questions for me were sort of answered by Leeds United there. One of the biggest questions that popped up in advance of the game was who's going to get all the goals for Leeds United right now? And we got a little bit of an answer there. There was a question around, okay, so are Leeds realistically good enough right now to end up winning matches like this when we've got a few injuries at play? And we had a fair few injuries at play, as we now know, with Daniel Farke saying after the match that we had more problems than he was letting on, and he just wasn't letting it on because that would have been a very, very bad idea. And a third question that I had was around sort of set pieces, because set pieces are a little bit of a spooky thing for Leeds fans. Leeds fans see the other team get a corner and they're just like, right, okay, that's a 1-0 down, and we all know that we don't come back from being a goal behind. It's done, it's over, it's finished. Which the reality of the situation is not quite realistic. So I figured it would be a little bit worth having a bit of a chat about absolutely everything. And further note for you, if you have anything specific to say about the match, like Mark, well, he's not saying anything about the match, but if you've got anything that you want to say about the match and we can have a little bit of a discussion, maybe a little bit of an argument, I'm not particularly bothered either way, then just pop it in the chat. That would be absolutely wonderful. And we are going to start with me feeling a little bit vindicated around supporting a Leeds United player throughout this season, which I do sometimes. Sometimes I feel a little bit good because I've supported a Leeds player and backed their cause to the hilt. Hello there, Michael Gott. Hold on, I will just get the chat up on... Don't know why that's not working. That's good. Yes, I do. I'll get the chat up on screen, just in case people have a little bit of a natter. But Brendan Aronson has been getting a hell of a lot of critique from a hell of a lot of people for a hell of a lot of time now, and we all understand why, because he was a part of that Marsh side that struggled a hell of a lot, and that tends to lead to a position in which you're not really the most backed of players, especially by the fan base, because the whole Marsh thing put a lot of blood on a lot of different players' hands. And I think he's genuinely coming through and doing a fantastic job recently. Good evening, Mr. Paul Brody. Aronson yesterday, I'm just going to go through his stats, and his stats aren't necessarily going to tell the entire story because there was a little bit beyond it that is probably worth discussing. But got himself a goal, which was a very, very important goal to get. In terms of XG, it's going to be a high XG chance. I'm not going to deny this. It was a fairly simple opportunity, but he put it in the back of the net, and that's what counted. Had 3 shots in total, one of which hit the woodwork, and that was... it was a lovely shot to take. Considering it was after dribbling the entire length of the pitch, taking on, I think, 4 players or something. Fires a shot off, takes a deflection, just about hits the bar. Very, very unfortunate from Brendan Aronson. I think if he would have scored that, it was a genuine candidate for goal of the season. But 2 of his shots were blocked, and he was offside once. But beyond that, a lot of what he did in that match was his defensive work, and his defensive work is spectacular, because he's one of those players that isn't necessarily going to be someone that is just like, yeah, get into him and lump in a hard challenge and all that kind of stuff that Leeds fans admittedly love to see. We love to see a player getting a little bit crunchy, a little bit vicious in the challenge. It's not Brendan Aronson's game. Let's be completely fair about that point. But when you look at the numbers from that match, he's managed to turn a lot of that around. Attempted 3 tackles, didn't technically win any of those, and that's not great, but recovered the ball 4 times, which is a very important thing to do. It means that if Leeds are in possession, they're not in possession, and that applies that little bit more pressure to them. Ground duels, right? He had 10 ground duels, and he managed to win 8 of them. And when we're saying that, like, Aronson's not a very strong player in the challenge and all this kind of stuff, that's a thing that we need to be aware of, but at the same time, he is winning those duels and he's winning those challenges and he's coming away with the ball. And a lot of what we did really, really well yesterday was winning the ball back in those dangerous areas and turning defence into attack really, really, really quickly. That's something that as a club we're doing fairly well at doing recently, and if we can continue to do it, beautiful. I love to see it. Also, a little bit of a quick note that we've discovered on the way that YouTube is doing stuff. It came to mind just a second ago, and I don't want to miss out on it. YouTube, we believe, is not counting views if they are inactive, which isn't good, which means that if you could make sure that you are somewhat active whilst watching this stream by liking or commenting or whatever, you can dislike it if you want, it still counts as a view, that'd be massively appreciated just because that helps to keep things sort of chugging over. Thank you very much. Back to the main bit of the stuff. Sorry, we are having to fight YouTube to the death at the minute. It's wonderful. And I'll be honest, things have sort of turned around on Aronson. I'm going to run a very quick poll, actually, and say... Right, there we go. Or that, or... that. Right, cool. Poll. What do you think Brendan Aronson's role should be? Starting 11, on the bench, squad option, or sold? I think that's a pretty fair poll, because I think, to be honest, he's playing to a really, really good standard at the minute. And whilst it might not be the on-the-ball stuff that he does really excitingly, like you get a little bit more of that out of Noah Okafor, I think it's the everything else that he's applying in a really sort of effective manner. Mr. Aronson had a good game. He must have taken the blue pill doing a Neo yesterday. He was just dancing his way through defenders. And that's the kind of thing that we absolutely love to see. I was incredibly happy with that. Just going to check through the comments. Is it important that Daniel sends the message to all his players by taking Stack out as well as Strauch, indicating if you want to place in the lineup, you have to prove it? I think that does help, and that is a part of it. So Daniel Farke has always said that if someone is fit enough to be in the squad, they are fit enough to play a significant number of minutes. However, Stack and Strauch were still in the squad. We know that Strauch has been struggling with, was it a broken finger and a bruised rib or something along those lines? And Strauch was ill in the week, which, again, isn't something that you necessarily want to see all the time. But also, they were in the squad, which means that they were fit enough to play a little bit of football, and the fact that they were fit enough to play a little bit of football and weren't just dropped off the bench entirely tells you that that Farke has made the active decision to say, okay, no, you are dropped for this match, we will put in another player and we will see how it goes. That, I think, is something that's fairly important, and it shows that whilst Strauch is, not Strauch, again, I keep saying Strauch instead of Farke, whilst Daniel Farke is someone that is happy to be a little bit patient when it comes to his players and saying, right, okay, you get a few bad performances and then you come out of the team, which a lot of people don't like, we know this. But rather than just purely saying, no, you're just going to stay there forever, it's increasingly becoming a case of you can stick around for a bit, but if those performances get too bad, you're off, because we've got some options now. Last season, if you would have said Strauch needs to drop to the bench or Strauch needs to not be there, the next option was Ampadu, which obviously not great for the midfield, because once Ampadu drops into centre-back, you can't have him as the 6. Admittedly, it was a different system then, and we didn't really need the 6, but still, it complicates things. Whereas now we actually have the numbers to do stuff. In addition to that, I think James Justin did pretty damn well coming off the bench. A lot of people have sort of taken note of the fact that he didn't necessarily have the best of performances, and he wasn't quite Gabby Goodmanson down that flank and just bombing on and doing damage and causing danger. They're not the same player. We're going to have to admit to this. James Justin was at Leicester before this. Goodmanson was at Lille and playing Champions League football. There is a reason that Goodmanson is starting, and we're not going to get the exact same stuff out of James Justin, but I think James Justin has played to a reasonably solid standard. And I think he did his job yesterday, to be completely honest with you. And I was a little bit surprised by a couple of the choices that the ref made with bookings. Like the fact that Lucas Perry got booked when they had a corner for kicking the ball technically away, but directly to a West Ham player is kind of like, right, okay, so you've just got a bit of a power trip going, haven't you? But yeah, I think Justin was fairly solid. Grove did a great job carrying a knackered midfield when he came on. He did, and this is why I'm a little bit surprised that we keep getting the Gruev disrespect. And the Gruev disrespect is essentially when people say, well, he's not technically the best footballer and we could have sold him in the summer to get someone else in. And it's like, well, we could. But also, His work rate is absolutely ridiculous. And you know that if you bring him off the bench, he's going to do a hell of a lot of stuff just to sort of keep things ticking over, keep things rolling, and make sure that we do a little bit of damage to them fairly consistently. Realistically, Justin's the perfect backup for both sides. He is. He's like Sam Byram, but less injury prone and also less old. Which I'll be completely... Hold on, that's not quite centered. There we go. I'll be completely honest. Not an insult to Sam Byram. More saying that James Justin has youth on his side, which I think is a pretty damn good thing to have as a footballer, and a good thing to have as a football club. Beyond that, other performances. Ref should have got a yellow for poking Amper doing the eye, then demanding he goes off the pitch for 30 seconds. That was a fucking joke. Right. I didn't want to do Atwell right now. I was skipping past Atwell for a few minutes, but I think we're going to have to do a little bit of Atwell. If you're the referee, one, you do your best to consistently stay out of the way of play. That is just a must. You cannot be someone that is that in the way that when you're like flinging your arms about directly into a player's face. Like, that's just clumsy, stupid refereeing. Two, get control of a fucking game of football, man. Like, it felt like his way of trying to gain control was be like, these Leeds players aren't leaving the pitch when they're leading the game, therefore they are trying to time waste, so I will make them leave. No, with the Goodmanson one, you tried to make him leave the pitch when he hadn't gotten any treatment at all. He was hurt, sure. He'd sat down for a bit, sure. But the rule is, if someone goes off to have treatment, then what happens in response to that is they get the physios on and they leave with the physios, in which, in theory, the physios are checking them over for 30 seconds and then you come back on. Goodmanson didn't need physios. Goodmanson went down because he, I believe, landed on Beale's studs or something like that. But whatever it was, it didn't look too fantastic. It was, I think, small of his back kind of thing, which isn't wonderful. But you have to deal with those sometimes. And he was still like, no, get off the pitch. Off you fuck. Why? What are you doing? Ref! Huh? Like, I understand being like, yeah, we need to enforce the letter of the law. You can't just make up a new law and be like, no, I'm doing those letters, actually. I prefer these letters. They're shinier, and I wrote them, so that's what counts instead. It's stupid stuff. And the making Ampadu leave the pitch because you've poked him in the eye is sort of... It's next level insanity in terms of refereeing. It's very much, oh, I've done a mistake here. What do I do next? Right, okay, so someone's injured, goes down, send them off the pitch. Right. And it felt like he was sort of reverting to the previous rules that he tried to set. It was nonsense. It was so daft. I did not understand what he was doing for the majority of that match. But Premier League referees are going to Premier League referee, and there's not too much that you can do about that. Outside of that, we got a little bit of Lucas Perry, where there was a touch of discontent among some people. I'm not going to sort of call people out or anything, but people that were very, like, we need to see a lot more Karl Darlow this season. When Lucas Perry was announced, a lot of Twitter kind of went, that's not good, which isn't necessarily ideal. Because I think he had a pretty damn good game. His distribution was significantly better than before. So having a quick look at it, let's go to his passing numbers. Accurate passing, yeah, it's only 60%, but that's because a hell of a lot of it is long ball stuff. In terms of his short passing, he only missed one at any point. And long balls, it's quite hard to get accurate, especially when you're pinging it up to Calvert-Lewin. And that front line that we've got, I think I've started to figure out what the game plan is. And does anyone... This is a deep lore kind of pull here from Monogin. But does anyone remember Valerian Ismaili's Barnsley team? Where he managed to get Barnsley into the playoffs using what was a very, very weird, very, very fun tactic that amounted to bang it long and don't even try and win the first ball. Because if you try and win the first ball, you take yourself out of the options for the second. So just win every second ball is the general rule of thumb, and that's what we tend to do at the top of the pitch. So yeah, we might not win the immediate header, but when Kilman or Todibo or Wan-Bissaka win the header, they find it a little bit harder to win the second. We pick up the ball at that point. That'll presumably be where a lot of those ball recoveries for Aronson came from, and then we mount an attack from there. I've always preferred winning second ball to winning first ball, but that's where I'm leaning with it, to be completely honest with you. But yeah, I quite like Perry, and I felt weirdly vindicated in that save that he made in the first half, where a shot from a relatively close range, tries to catch it, right? And so much of last season, there were people going down the line of, well, why doesn't Meslier just catch a ball? And that's why you don't just catch a ball, because sometimes when you catch a ball, it spills. And Perry was switched on enough in the moment to go, oh shit, and get that second punch on it, which is genuinely very, very, very good goalkeeping. But this is why punching happens quite a lot. Because if you punch it, it's definitely a decent distance away from you, whereas if you catch it and it spills, there's goalkeepers right underneath it. For example, Brendan Aronson's goal is a case of a goalkeeper doesn't hold on to a shot, bobbles free, finished easily. That's why we punch. So I had to get that one in. You guys know I had to get that one in. I like Perry, but it was a bit flappy or punchy. I agree, and that's part of why I went on that little rant. Perry has the aura. I don't know, his distribution was better. I didn't notice that. He was, and his throwing is so good. I'm a big fan of him. Perry didn't make me feel comfortable. I'll be honest, I didn't feel under threat for the vast majority of that match, to be completely honest. I felt sort of okay, but we'll go on to the tactical side of things in a few minutes, because I think there's going to be a bit more conversation to be had there. I know I'm saving things for the end. I'm doing structure. It's great. Perry was unlucky with their goal from the camera angle on Sky behind the goal. He was a millimetre away from getting a touch save. He was very close to it, and also it sort of tucked right into the corner. It's not one that's easy to get to, but he did his best. You can't save everything, but I'm not going to be too mad if that's the goal. I won't be using Perry making that save to justify Melior's actions. Oh, I'm not saying it's to justify the actions. There were a lot of times where I was sort of saying, I like the theory of what Melior's done, however, he's a donkey. That I was just sort of like backing the theory in that instance, if that makes sense. I hope that does, because if not, I'm going to look like a moron. Lowton Perry left the box to intercept a through ball in the second half. Not sure Darlow does that. Yes, I enjoyed that as well. Something a bit sweepy-keepy is always quite nice. And it's something that I was watching the Scum-Brighton match a few minutes ago, and for the fourth Scum goal, it is significantly because Verbruggen he doesn't know whether he goes or he stays, ends up staying, and Cunha just fires it in over his head. Perry being that decisive is something that is going to be a massive positive for us this season, I think. He was hitting DCL every time with kicks. He was, and it was lovely. And over the season, we are going to learn why he is a player that is that valuable. What's Meslier done? I'm referring to last season stuff. You're welcome, Jim. Sorry, I felt a bit shenanigan-y. You've got to sometimes. I can't work Verbruggen out. I think he's a good goalkeeper with the occasional error in him, is the way that I put it, because he's still 23. He's gonna make those errors. I just had to Google to check his age, but those mistakes are gonna happen from time to time, and I'll be honest, happening when you're already losing to Scum isn't going to be the worst thing. Perry's a big man, looks very imposing. He's massive. It's terrifying. But we got to do a little bit of talk on tactics, because I had a little bit of a chat with Jer about this one, and specifically around style of play and stuff like that. I think there's something interesting to be said, because we came out of the gate, that's the one, like with a lot of energy and a lot of verve and a lot of oomph, which I like. I like that sort of fiery way of playing and getting into a game and trying to cause some big problems. And we scored 2 goals in the first 15 minutes, and it was lovely. And for the most part in that first half, we stayed on top of them. The attacking momentum was absolutely on our side. I'm just going to have a quick look at the stats. In that first half, we made 1.23 XG. They made 0.34. We had 9 shots. They had 3. We were all over them. For the bulk of that first half, they had very little. And then the second half came along. And the start of the second half, I would genuinely say, was solid. That start of the second half from us was very nice, and we had a few pretty damn good chances. And then we just slowed up a little bit. We started the half 4 shots, which ain't too bad. I'm not going to complain about that one, if I'm going to be completely honest with you. And then we just got a little bit slower and slower and slower. Our last shot of the match was on the 62nd minute, which isn't what you want to see necessarily, especially from a club that is like, let's get a little bit more aggressive. But I'm going to do a follow-up poll, actually. Right. Also, in the starting 11 poll, 59% of you believe that Brendan Aronson should be in the starting 11, which is quite interesting. But I'm going to end that one, and I'm going to start a new one. What do you think about the plan to drop in at 2-0 up? There we go. So, quick question for you guys, right? The plan to drop in at 2-0 up. Did you like it and you would do the same yourself? Did you like it but you wouldn't do the same yourself? Or did you not like it at all? Because for me, I think a lot of what happened there was a result of some pretty significant required changes. As was discussed on the Okafor thing, he was only fit enough for 50-55 minutes. Daniel Farke being flexible enough to say, I'm going to start Noah Okafor in the event that he's available for 55-ish minutes, I quite liked, to be honest. It shows a little bit more versatility in his tactical decision-making, all that kind of stuff. So bringing on Harrison, we don't necessarily want to do it, but we kind of have to, because if he's not able to do 90 minutes, then he's not able to do 90 minutes. At the same time, you look at your left-back situation, you've had to take off Gudmundsson, who is one of our better attacking outlets. Weird to say about a left-back, but he just is. He brings that little bit of sort of hyper-flexibility and makes the attacking side of the game more viable. So we sit in a bit. And I think that was done for a very, very good reason. And I think that very, very good reason is the fact that the number of crosses that they attempted was obscene. So, having a look at the data, Leeds United in that match tried 11 crosses, 5 of them reached their target. Lovely, decent success rate, fantastic. We're not going so cross-heavy in this match because we don't need to, but we will from time to time. On the other side, you've got West Ham. They had 3 successful crosses, which is 2 less than us, but they tried more than double the number of crosses that we did. They had 23 goes at whipping the ball into the box. And to be fair, I kind of rate it, because it shows that Daniel Farke in those situations sees that Leeds United have fairly good centre-backs in the air. Joe Rodon winning another header at a corner and it ending up in the back of the net. Beautiful. That little adjustment is now working absolutely perfectly. I'm a big fan of it. But it's going to be the same sort of job at the other end, because at the other end you've got Leeds centre-backs taking on crosses and trying to win headers. And the fact that 20 times we were able to get our good old bouncers on it and get it clear is perfect. And it shows that we had that trust in the back line to deal with cross after cross after cross after cross. And yeah, eventually it kind of worked for them. I don't know if I call Bowen's ball in a cross, because it's more of a sort of whippy thing from not a super wide area. But I think we're in a weird spot as a fan base where, this is going to be a weird way of phrasing it, we're in a bit of an odd position as a fan base where we like to see the sort of champagne football, the really, really nice stuff that we saw under Marcelo Bielsa, which, fair enough, that was a fantastic time and I loved it. But that's not the manager that we have right now. Because the manager that we have right now is Daniel Farke. And he's a bit more risk-averse, and it's completely understandable that he's risk-averse. And it felt, in my opinion, like what Farke saw was last week's match against Burnley, in which we tried cross after cross after cross after cross after cross, and it was met by centre-back after centre-back after centre-back after centre-back. And our response to that in my opinion, seemed like it was effectively, oh, okay, so you can just do that. You can just sit and let those crosses come in because they're not going to be of any danger. At the very start of the match, they didn't have a striker on the pitch. They had Lucas Paqueta, who was playing as a sort of false 9, high 10, weird kind of mishmash thing. And eventually they swapped him out, put him a little bit deeper and said, okay, we'll try Callum Wilson. And Callum Wilson does not have the physicality anymore to win those headers against Rodon, against Biol, because Callum Wilson has a tendency to be fairly constantly injured. So personally, for the poll that I put up where it was I liked it, I'd do the same, I liked it, wouldn't do it myself, I didn't like it at all. For me, I kind of like the decision. I wouldn't myself, because that's not the style of play that I enjoy. It's not the style of play that I enjoy watching. As someone that plays a little bit of football, it's not the style of play that I enjoy playing. But it was a style of play that shows that we saw what happened in a similar match fairly recently, in which Leeds were consistently trying to put a team in trouble with those crosses and failed. And we went, oh, okay. And we just adapted. And I think that's something that is going to be incredibly valuable to us for the rest of the season. And let's have a quick look. Because whilst it isn't the most fun sort of football to watch, there is evidence to show that the way that we're approaching things tactically right now is effective. I've always been someone that is of the opinion that in a game of football, the way that you can effectively judge if a manager has done a good or a bad job is through XG and expected points, right? And the reason that I specifically bring this one up is that on expected points, we are looking brilliant at the minute. Currently, we're sitting at 14th in the league, which, yeah, I agree, not the best place for us to be. 14th is sort of danger zone-ish. We're on 11 points out of 9 matches. It's not ideal, but it's reasonable. But I'm going to quickly show you the expected points table, just because this, what it does is it compares your XG for, your XG against, says in how many of those situations do you win, how many do you lose, how many do you draw, and it takes where your points should be roughly, and it'll be decimal places and all that kind of stuff, but it gives you a rough estimation of, based on performance, how good is your team. And I'm just going to zoom in a touch. I'm going to make the point that Leeds, sorted by expected points, are currently the 6th best team in the league. And yeah, we are in the middle of a match day. Liverpool are going to play later. And as are Bournemouth, as are Brentford, etc. But the only one of the teams that are below us on expected points right now that can actually catch us in this match day is Liverpool. So that puts us 7th best in the league right now. And whilst it's not, I'm going to be completely clear here, I'm not using this as a judge of this makes us a fantastic team and we should be 7th right now, because you need to account for individual errors and problems with finishing and all that kind of stuff. Finishing, again, was reasonable in that match, but we could do with that a little bit more of a cutting edge, but we all know this. But for me, this is a sign that from Daniel Farke's end, he's not doing too much wrong. He's sending out a team with the sort of tactical nous that they need to stay organised, not concede too many chances, because expected goals against, we're currently at 9.18, right? It's the 4th best defence in the division. And if Man City concede 1 XG against in their next match, if Newcastle concede 1.8 against in their next match, because we're not going to catch Arsenal here, then they start having worse looking defences than us in terms of chances created. So I'll be completely honest with you, I think that we are just a little bit of luck away from looking like a genuinely fairly scary and solid team that other sides won't necessarily want to face. It's this Lee Naylor saying, like, right now, even if we could easily be sat in the same spot as Sunderland if luck was slightly more on our side, 3 mistakes or misses less. Yeah, because, like, that own goal that came against Fulham, ridiculously unfortunate. We've had a few chances at different ends of the pitch that have probably cost us, 4 points, give or take? If I look at our total and I add 4, it's 15 points. Because we've been pretty unfortunate in some of the matches so far this season. And I think from a tactical perspective, whilst it's not the stuff that we want to see, and whilst it's not stuff that we actually enjoy and fell in love with when we started liking football, I'll take it. Because it's putting us where we need to be at the minute. 4 points drop Bournemouth and Fulham. Yeah. With a little bit of luck, we would look like we are just romping this league. And unfortunately, we've not necessarily had that go our way, and we're currently sat in 14th. But I don't mind that, to be fair. We said 17th, and 14th will absolutely do so far. Remaining to play below us, by the way, that can actually catch and overtake us is only Brentford. So at worst, at the end of this match week, we are 15th in the league. We can't realistically overtake Everton unless they manage to get beat 6-0. That one doesn't feel hugely likely, but I don't know. We really have. Indeedly. Thank you for backing me on that one. Someone on Matches Watch long said Farke should be sacked for the second half performance. Why? On it, it's so spectacularly weird to me, right? That people are consistently of the opinion that you need to be constantly dominating games of football. That it can't always be the case. We need to remember that West Ham, whilst they have been horrible, bad so far this season, there's a context to that. And there's the fact that they had that little bit of managerial insecurity, and any moment they could just, bang, switch it on. And we managed to make sure that a front line of Paqueta, who had interest from Man City until the gambling stuff, Bowen, who has consistently been a problem for Leeds, and let's be honest, is consistently a player for England, and Somerville, who we sold to them for about £40 million, we kept them down to an XG of 0.65. We were unlucky to concede, statistically. So I think to sort of say Farke needed to go for that performance is, it's very knee-jerky. And it feels like the kind of decision that Marinakis would make. And I think this season of all seasons, we've got a little bit of evidence that just making Marinakis-style decisions are not going to be the ones that will serve you especially well. We need a couple more players in January. I agree, we do. And you can find out more about how Leeds might go about doing that on my Football Manager streams. That'd be quite nice, wouldn't it? We've signed in Edouard Spurtjan. We've started the season, and we only got hammered 5-1 by Arsenal this time out, so there. I'm considering doing one where I don't end up having to sell Ethan Ampadu, though. That might be quite nice. It's bullcrap. What's bullcrap? No, in fact, what I'll do is I'll restart the save, but I'll do it without having the summer window. So I've only got January to build out. I'll do it that way around. Yeah, what are we calling bullcrap? By the way, we have now entered what I'm going to call the Q&A part of the stream, where if you've got any questions, just chuck them in. You got anything to talk about, just chuck them in, because I've got work starting in about 5 minutes' time. So I just thought, let's have a little bit of a natter. And we'll just have people's various perspectives. These people have made the choice and won't give them a chance, they never will. Yeah, it's the people that have wanted Daniel Farke gone since we signed him. Because it feels like the moment we signed him, a hell of a lot of people went, yeah, but it didn't work at Norwich. He got them promoted, but it didn't work at Norwich. Farke being sacked for winning a game of football. Yeah, I agree. At the end of the day, it's 3 points that matters more than anything. But people are being people. And the moment that you saw so many people sort of saying, yeah, well, Daniel Farke needs to go because he didn't do well at Norwich when he was in the Premier League. I was like, yeah, sure, but the most he spent in a window there was not much. And his marquee signing across all of his time in the Premier League was Josh Sargent. There was one of those windows where his marquee signing was Sam Byram. It's kind of like, well, no, you can't judge a manager based on one window with no money. Only Abramovich would do that. Whoa. Not only Abramovich. You seem to have forgotten the season where Daniel Levy sacked Jose Mourinho the week before a League Cup final. They've wanted him out since the play. No, before that. Holy shit, Brentford are beating Liverpool. Please be Igor Thiago. I don't know what Igor Thiago's face looks like. Oh, it's Dango Watara. Sorry, FPL doing its thing. And the Forest owner. And the Forest owner. I did forget about him. But that seems to be because he personally hated Nuno. And maybe Nuno will never be the same manager again. Who knows? But it was before the playoff final. It was comfortably into that season. Because I distinctly remember going on streams and stuff and people being like, if we don't go up automatically, he needs to go. And it's kind of like, okay, if you say so. I hate the new long throw meta. It's very Rory Delap. And like, I appreciate Rory Delap as a meme. That doesn't mean that I want the meme back. Memes should not return to reality. Is it Kirkes who's just completely lost his man? Yes, it's Kirkes. Do you think Willie will ever be what we think and hope he will be with us? I honestly don't think so. Because if you look at the current version of the Leeds squad, he doesn't make my first 11 if everyone is fit. Because if everyone is fit, then just to address one other bit first, it's a copycat league. It is, but that's because it works. That was weird. Having someone that's good at long throws is effectively just having more corners, and managers love to have corners, so it kind of makes sense. But I think with Willie, what he really needs is a lot more game time. But for me, given the start of the season so far, I don't know if he's good enough for it right now. Like, my big concern around Willie Gnonto at the minute is, sure, decent player when he's on form, takes time to get into form. And I don't think right now sorry, thanks Matt, you threw me there. But you're right. I think right now Aronson is the better presence in his overall game on the right-hand side, and I think Okafor is a better player on the left. So I don't know if he develops into this sort of like superstar that we were expecting when he's at Leeds United. That's the problem. Amps can take long throws but doesn't do it. Yeah, I don't mind that we're not doing it though. It's one of those things where if you're putting all of your centre-backs up for a throw-in, then that feels like the game has a little bit gone. That feels a little bit funky to me. Bit of an odd one. But what I'm going to do is I'm not going to end the stream just now. However, what I am going to do is ask if you guys could do something a little bit different. Could you do me a favour and in the chat rate Leeds United's performance in that game from a 1 to a 5? In fact, sod it, we'll do 10. Rate Leeds United's match from 1 to 10, and over the season I might do my best to try and track all these things and see what people think. For me, I would go with... it's a 7 or an 8. I'd lean 7. 8 if we didn't concede, 9 or 10 if we just stayed on them and started attacking. But yeah, I think I'll land on a 7. But just to sort of track like the mood and the feeling as the season goes on, because I'll keep trying to do more of these post-match stream bits, because I think they're just quite nice to do. We've got 7, a 7, a 7, a high 7, another 7, a 7.5, an 8 from Matt. Yeah, I think I'm happy enough with that match. And 6.5, ooh, that's a little bit lower. And ultimately, I hope that sort of sets a little bit of a tone for this period. Because up next is... let's have a look at the planner. Up next is Brighton on the 1st, which is one of those that might be a little bit of a challenging game. Brighton have been beaten 4-2 today, but honestly, I don't think they necessarily deserve to get beaten soundly. And then is Forest. And we've got no idea how Forest will be playing because it's sort of a new Daichi reign. And they did win in Europe. And they did beat... was it Porto? It might have been Porto. But whoever it is that they beat... yeah, it was Porto. Porto were coming off an 11-match winning run. Which says that there's at least a little bit more belief in that Forest side at the minute, which is something that's quite scary. But then again, they scored 2 penalties, so it's quite hard to say. But yeah, this will give us an idea of sort of optimism and all that kind of stuff. But I am now starting work in -1 minute. I have a message on Teams that I urgently need to reply to. So I hope you enjoyed the stream. If you did, please pop a like on it again. As I mentioned, YouTube is now sort of tracking a weird sort of active viewership-y thing, we think. which is fun. So if you could just sort of do that, that'd be absolutely wonderful. Subscribe if you haven't yet as well, because YouTube is also removing inactive subscribers, which means that my subscriber number keeps going down. So if you haven't yet, that'd be massively appreciated. And you could even become a channel member if you want. You get a bunch of videos early and stuff. Hope you all enjoyed. I'm going to dip there, and I will see you all later. Toodaloo.